You know that feeling, right? You're stuck in a waiting room, your doctor's appointment is running late, and you're getting just a little bit annoyed. We've all been there. But today, we are going to put that tiny frustration into some serious historical perspective. Let's dive in. No, really, think about it for a second, because we're about to take a journey back in time, a time before antibiotics, before vaccines, before anyone even knew what a germ was. This was a time when getting sick meant you had to face cures that were, frankly, way more terrifying than the actual disease. The very fact that you're here listening to this right now is a flat-out miracle. It means that somewhere down your long ancestral line, person after person somehow managed to survive, not just plagues and infections, but also the absolutely brutal treatments that were supposed to save them. It's an unbelievable story of luck and toughness. So to really appreciate how good we have it, we are going to rank the most horrifying medical treatments in human history. We'll start at what we'll call Tier D, merely awful, and we're going to work our way all the way up to the stuff of pure nightmares in Tier S. All right, let's kick things off in Tier D, where are we winding the clock about 10,000 years to a moment that changed everything for humanity. We stopped hunting and gathering, and we started farming. Sounds like a pretty good upgrade, right? Well, maybe not for our teeth. See, this new diet, full of carbs from grains and starches, meant that for the first time in history, people's teeth were basically rotting out of their skulls on a massive scale. Archaeologists find ancient skeletons from this time with just horrifying dental problems, abscesses, decay, you name it. And the solution? Oh man, there was no gentle scraping or laughing gas. Your quote-unquote dentist was just a person with some primitive tools who would jam them in there and yank that rotten tooth straight out of your head. No anesthesia, no painkillers. The shock and the pain alone could be just as dangerous as the infection. Okay, let's climb the ladder of horror to Tier C. We're jumping forward to the year 1347. Europe is about to be consumed by a biological firestorm that will completely reshape the world, the Black Death. This plague was absolutely terrifying. You could catch it just by breathing the same air as someone who was sick. The symptoms were like something out of a horror movie, and it spread like wildfire. So what was the brilliant medical solution they came up with to fight this thing? Well, the big idea at the time was something called miasma theory. Basically, doctors thought the plague was spread by bad smells, by toxic, stinky, invisible air. So their solution wasn't to fight germs they didn't know existed, but to fight the smell. And this theory gave us one of the most terrifying images in all of history, the plague doctor. They wore these creepy bird-like masks stuffed with flowers and herbs to block out the bad air, and they'd poke sick people with long sticks, partly to keep their distance and partly to, check their vibe and see if they were still alive. And the result of this vibe check medicine? It was a complete and utter catastrophe. Get this. Up to 60% of the entire population of Europe was wiped out. All right, moving on up to Tier B. Now, this next one is truly wild because it wasn't some fringe idea. For centuries, for thousands of years, this was the absolute core of mainstream Western medicine, and it was all based on a simple idea of balance. The theory was called the four humors. For over 2,000 years, doctors believed the body was governed by four liquids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And if you got sick, it was just a simple imbalance. The usual suspect? You guessed it, too much blood. So the cure for basically everything was bloodletting. You got a fever? Let's drain some blood. Stomach ache? Drain some blood. They'd either literally slice open a vein or, and this is just lovely, cover your body in hungry leeches. Just imagine being weak from an illness, and the doctor's cure is to make you even weaker by draining your own life force. And now we enter Tier A. This is where things escalate into the realm of pure visceral horror. We are moving from bad theories about your blood to a procedure that involves drilling directly into the human skull. Way back in ancient times, if you suffered from something like chronic migraines or epilepsy or maybe a mental illness, some doctors had a very simple explanation. You had an evil spirit trapped inside your head. And if something's trapped, well, you've got to let it out, right? This procedure was called trepanation. A healer would take a sharp tool and just start drilling or cutting or scraping away a piece of your skull to create an exit for the demon. And I really have to emphasize this. This was done without any modern anesthesia while you were fully conscious, just lying there hoping they didn't slip and poke your brain. And that brings us to the top of our list, the absolute pinnacle of medical horror, Tier S, the era of surgery before anesthesia. This is, without a doubt, the single most terrifying medical scenario you can possibly imagine. Back in the 19th century, before we had ether or chloroform, something as simple as a bad cut or a broken bone that got infected, well, that was a death sentence. The infection would spread, and your only chance, your only tiny sliver of hope for survival, was amputation. And the only mercy a surgeon could offer you was to be fast. You would be held down or strapped down to a table by several strong assistants. The surgeon would take a knife and cut through your flesh, then grab a saw and go right through the bone, as fast as humanly possible, all while you were awake, conscious, and screaming. The best surgeons, the most famous ones, could take a leg off in under 3 minutes. And if that somehow wasn't horrifying enough, they had no concept of germ theory, no sterilization whatsoever. Surgeons would move from one patient to the next without washing their hands or their tools. They would often wear the same apron for days, caked in the dried blood of past operations, almost like a gruesome badge of honor. So, after all of that, from rotten teeth to drilling skulls to bone saws, what's the real takeaway here? I mean, it's easy to just be horrified by these stories, but there's a much more powerful way to look at all of this. The next time you have to get a shot, or you're waiting a few extra minutes for a doctor, just remember what your ancestors went through. Remember the leeches, the bird masks, and the bone saws. Because you are living in a medical paradise that they could not have even dreamed of. You are the miracle.